I didn't believe in guardian angels until the porches started waking up for me. The first time I noticed the porch lights, I'd been walking home from my shift at Riverside General for exactly 3 weeks. 2 in the morning in November isn't exactly welcoming in Burlington, Vermont. The streets are empty, the wind cuts through your scrubs like they're made of tissue paper, and every shadow makes you walk a little faster. The only sound was the rhythmic scuff of my own worn-out sneakers on the pavement, a lonely metronome in the quiet. But that night, something was different. Mrs. Kowalski's porch light was on, not unusual by itself. Lots of people forget to turn off their lights. But as I passed her neat Victorian on Maple Street, her curtain twitched, and I caught a glimpse of her face in the window. She gave me a little wave, barely visible through the frost on the glass. I waved back, confused but touched. Up ahead, a sedan idled at the curb, exhaust drifting like fog. I crossed to the side with the Johnson's light and felt my shoulders unclench. Funny how a 60-watt bulb can make a street feel like a friend. Then I noticed the Johnsons' place 2 houses down, their light steady as a lighthouse lamp. And the Nguyens across the street. And old Mr. Peterson's at the corner, his ancient bulldog Bruno visible through the storm door, tail wagging like he'd been waiting for me. By the time I reached my apartment, I'd counted 12 porch lights. 12 little pinpricks of light against the dark, and at least half of them with faces in windows, checking to make sure I made it past safely. Each one felt like a silent promise. I wasn't entirely alone. I didn't know it then, but those lights weren't just for me. They were practicing for something bigger. The thing about November in Vermont is that it gets dark by 4:30 in the afternoon. By the time my shift ended at 2 in the morning, it felt like I'd been living in darkness for 10 straight hours. The cold was the kind that made your bones ache, made every step feel like wading through frozen molasses. Those 12 lights, they were like breadcrumbs leading me home, each one a tiny sun in the endless night. I'm Maggie Sullivan, and I'd been a night shift nurse for all of 2 months. The job at Riverside was everything I'd dreamed of. Helping people, making a difference, using the skills I'd spent 4 years and $40,000 learning. But nobody tells you in nursing school how lonely the walk home can be. Nobody mentions how your whole life flips upside down when you're going to work as everyone else is going to bed. My mom had worried when I took the night shift position. "It's not safe, walking alone at that hour," she'd said during our weekly phone call. "Can't the hospital provide transportation?" "Mom, it's Burlington, not Gotham City," I'd laughed, "and it's only a 15-minute walk." But she was right about one thing. It was lonely. My roommate Jessica was always asleep when I got home. My friends were on normal schedules, and dating? Forget about it. Who wants to grab coffee at 3 in the afternoon when that's basically midnight for you? It was a strange whiplash, going from the controlled chaos of the hospital, the constant beeps, the hushed conversations, the raw, unfiltered humanity, to the profound, almost humming silence of a sleeping city. The apartment Jessica and I shared was on the 3rd floor of a converted Victorian, all creaky floors and rattling radiators. I'd gotten good at the silent entrance routine. Key in the lock slowly, door opened in increments to avoid the squeak, shoes off in the hallway. Jessica was a light sleeper and a kindergarten teacher who needed her rest. The last thing I wanted was to wake her up with my vampire schedule. The next night I counted again. 14 lights. Mrs. Kowalski was there in her window, this time with a cup of something steaming. She held it up like a toast as I passed. On my phone's notes app, I started keeping track. Tuesday, November 7th, 14 lights. Wednesday, November 8th, 16 lights. Thursday, November 9th, 15 lights. Mr. Peterson must have been asleep. It became my little ritual. Count the lights, wave at the faces, feel a little less alone in the darkness. Some nights, when a particularly hard shift left me drained, when I'd lost a patient or dealt with a difficult family or just felt the weight of all that human suffering, those lights were what kept me moving forward. One foot in front of the other, one light at a time, until I was home. 3 weeks into my counting, I mentioned it to Carla during our shift break. Carla had been a night nurse for 15 years and had seen everything. She wore calm like a uniform. She was the kind of nurse who could start an IV in a rolling ambulance, calm a panicking family with just her voice, and somehow still have energy to mentor newbies like me. Her gray-streaked hair was always in the same practical bun, and she had this way of looking at you that made you feel like everything would be okay. "That's beautiful," she said, stirring sugar into her coffee. The break room at 3 a.m. was our sanctuary. Vending machine humming, fluorescent lights flickering, the distant sound of monitors beeping. "You know what? The same thing happens on my street. Started about 5 years ago when old Mrs. Murray heard about a nurse getting mugged on her way home. Now half of Riverside Avenue keeps their lights on until 4 a.m. "Really?" I leaned forward, intrigued. "Really? And it's not just for nurses. The guy who delivers newspapers, the woman who opens the bakery on 5th Street, anyone who's out there in the dark. It's like an unspoken agreement. We look out for each other. It's the night shift code. We're a different breed, you and me. We see the city when it's asleep and vulnerable. So we have to be each other's daylight." That gave me an idea. That night, after counting my lights, 18, a new record. I posted in our neighborhood Facebook group, "To everyone who leaves their porch light on at night, thank you. You have no idea how much it means to those of us walking home in the dark. Your small act of kindness lights up more than just the sidewalk. Maggie, night shift nurse." I went to bed thinking maybe a few people would like the post. Maybe Mrs. Kowalski would comment with a smiley face. I woke up to 847 notifications. I stared at my phone, the screen a bright rectangle in my dark room, feeling like I'd accidentally plugged a toaster into a power plant. My small spark of gratitude had ignited a bonfire. The post had been shared across Burlington, with comments pouring in from night shift workers all over the city. Security guards, hospital janitors, police officers, EMTs, bakers, newspaper delivery people, all sharing their stories of porch lights and guardian angels. I thought I was the only one who noticed. There's a whole stretch of Union Street that lights up for me. Janet, ER tech. My neighbor leaves cookies on her porch for me every Friday, still warm at 3 a.m. Miguel, security guard. Been leaving my light on for 10 years, ever since my daughter started working nights. Now she's moved away, but I still do it. Glad to know it helps someone. Robert, retired teacher. But the comment that changed everything came from a tech developer named David Park. "This is amazing. What if we made an app, like a map showing which houses leave lights on, what times, maybe even let night workers share safe routes? I could build this." The responses were immediate and enthusiastic. Within an hour, David had created a separate thread for brainstorming. He wrote that his sister was a brand new nurse in Detroit, and every home text felt like a held breath. "I can't walk her block," he said, "but I can build a light for it." By that evening, he'd started a prototype. It never showed live dots or exact addresses, just opt-in windows and routes. Safety first, comfort second. There was also a simple "check on me" toggle for folks who lived alone. Opt-in, no pressure, just neighbor eyes when they wanted them. The app was simple but brilliant. Night shift workers could mark houses that left lights on, creating a crowdsourced map of safe lit routes throughout Burlington. You could filter by time. Some houses left lights on until midnight, others until dawn. There was a feature to thank homeowners anonymously, and another for reporting if a usually lit house was dark in case someone needed checking on. David had thought of everything. The app used soft amber tones that wouldn't hurt night-adjusted eyes. There was an SOS button that would alert nearby users if someone needed help. He'd even included a feature where homeowners could register their lights, adding little notes like "ring bell if you need bathroom," or "dog is friendly," or "nurse's mom, always have coffee ready." Within days, the map looked like a constellation. Little glowing dots spread across Burlington, each one representing someone who cared. It felt like we'd pulled the stars down to street level. I watched it grow in real time. A new light on Pine Street, 3 more on Washington, an entire block on South Winooski lighting up like dominoes. David called it Nightlight. Within a week, we had 300 users. We'd just hired Amy, fresh out of school with brand new clogs and a careful smile. She downloaded Nightlight before her first lunch break. Within a month, 2,000. The Burlington Free Press picked up the story. Local app illuminates community spirit. CNN ran a segment. Suddenly, other cities were asking David for the code to create their own versions. But the most beautiful part wasn't the media attention or the growing user base. It was what happened on my walks. Where once I'd counted 15 or 20 lights, now entire streets glowed like Christmas. On rainy nights, the glow doubled in the puddles, like the city decided to shine twice. People who'd never thought about it before were leaving lights on. Some got creative. Colored bulbs for holidays, little signs in windows saying, "Stay safe," or "Coffee's on if you need it." Mr. Peterson started a trend by putting a bench on his porch with a sign. "Rest if you need to. Bruno doesn't bite." Soon, other houses had benches, some with blankets for cold nights. A few of our seniors said the waves made them feel safer too, that knowing our faces was its own kind of porch light. The Riverside Avenue Cafe, which used to close at 9, started staying open until 3 a.m. on weekends, offering free coffee to anyone with a night shift ID badge. Maria, the owner, had lost her son in Afghanistan. He worked nights too, she told me once, filling my cup with the kind of strong coffee that could wake the dead. Different kind of night shift, but still, I know what it's like to worry about someone in the dark. Her cafe became our unofficial headquarters. Night shift workers from all over Burlington would gather there, sharing stories over coffee and Maria's famous apple turnovers. The walls filled with photos, nurses, EMTs, security guards, all smiling despite the ungodly hour. Maria never charged us full price for anything, always waving away our protests with flour-dusted hands. "Nights get long," she said. "People forget you're out there. I won't." But my favorite addition came from 9-year-old Lucy Morrison. She convinced her mom to let her set up what she called a blessing box on their fence, a little weatherproof container stocked with granola bars, hand warmers, and mini flashlights. Her hand-drawn sign read, "For our night heroes, take what you need." One evening, I spotted Lucy in a knit hat, slipping hand warmers under the granola bars like she was hiding treasure. "For extra cold nights," she whispered. My gloved fingers, numb from the cold, fumbled with the latch. Inside, nestled on a bed of cotton balls, were granola bars, tubes of lip balm, and a half-dozen chemical hand warmers. I grabbed a hand warmer, cracking the disc inside and feeling the miraculous wave of heat spread through my palm. It felt like holding a tiny captured star. I slipped the wrapper into my pocket like proof the night could be kind. The boxes spread across the neighborhood faster than spring flowers. Soon you couldn't walk 2 blocks without finding one, each stocked by different families with their own special touches. Someone tucked tiny thank you notes inside tea bags so the message floated up with the steam. The Yangs included tea bags and instant soup. The Smiths added phone charging cables. Someone on Oak Street left inspirational quotes, handwritten on index cards. I started leaving thank you notes in the boxes, little cards with messages like, "Your kindness got me through a tough shift," or "Knowing you care makes all the difference." Other night workers began doing the same. The boxes became message boards, connections between people who never met but looked out for each other nonetheless. One particularly hard night in February, we'd lost a young patient, a motorcycle accident, barely older than my brother. I couldn't face the walk home. I sat on the hospital steps, crying into my hands when my phone buzzed. The kid's name had been Tyler, 19 years old, liked vintage motorcycles and was studying to be a teacher. His parents had been there when we couldn't save him, and the sound of his mother's grief was still echoing in my ears. The automatic doors kept sighing open, letting in the sharp lobby smell of cleanser and wet wool. Every hiss felt like the night breathing. Some nights, the weight of all that loss just crushes you. You go into nursing to save lives, but nobody really prepares you for the ones you can't save. It was a notification from Nightlight. "Looks like you're still at work. Everything okay? Mrs. Kowalski." The app had a feature where regular route neighbors could check in if they noticed you hadn't passed by at your usual time. I'd forgotten about it until that moment. I messaged back, "Tough night, just need a minute." 3 minutes later, "Honey, you take all the time you need. But when you're ready, I've got hot chocolate and fresh cookies. Side doors open if you want to talk, or just sit quiet. Either's fine." Mrs. Kowalski's house smelled like cinnamon and old books. She didn't ask questions, just wrapped a quilt around my shoulders and put a mug in my hands. The hot chocolate had those tiny marshmallows, the kind that dissolve into sweet foam. We sat in her kitchen, with its checkered tablecloth and collection of ceramic roosters, and she told me about her husband who'd been a doctor. "Lost patients too," she said softly. "Came home some nights looking like the world had ended. I learned that sometimes the best thing isn't words. It's just being there, you know? Just witnessing the grief." She reached across the table and just rested her hand on mine. Her skin was soft and wrinkled, and her touch was steady. We sat like that for a long time, not saying anything, and in that silence, I felt a piece of the crushing weight on my chest begin to lift. That night, instead of counting lights, I counted kindnesses. Mrs. Kowalski's hot chocolate, Mr. Peterson's wave from his porch, Bruno at his feet. The Yang family had drawn hearts on their window in window markers. Someone had chalked, "You've got this, night shift heroes," on the sidewalk in front of the hospital. By the time I reached home, I felt held up by my entire community. The idea for the thank you walk came from Carla, naturally. It was early April, and we were discussing how the neighborhood had transformed over the winter. "We should do something," she said. "Something to show them what it means to us." "Like what?" "I don't know. When my kids were little, we used to do luminaria walks at Christmas, paper bags with candles lining the streets. What if we did something like that, but in reverse? The night shift workers walking with lights, thanking the houses?" The more we talked, the more excited we became. We brought it to the Nightlight community, and the response was overwhelming. David created an event feature in the app. The date was set for April 28th, a Saturday night when most people could participate. The plan was simple. Night shift workers would gather at Riverside General at 10 p.m. We'd walk through the neighborhoods carrying candles or flashlights, stopping at houses that had been marked in the app as regular light leavers. We'd sing, leave thank you cards, and end at Riverside Avenue Cafe for a community celebration. What we didn't expect was for the whole city to join in. All winter, it turned out, the Porches had been rehearsing. The night of April 28th was one of those perfect spring evenings, when winter finally admits defeat. The air smelled like blooming lilacs and possibility. A moth kept circling my candle. I cupped my hand so it wouldn't singe its wings. I arrived at the hospital to find not dozens but hundreds of people. The Porches were ready, and so were we. Nurses, doctors, EMTs, security guards, bakers, journalists who worked the night desk, even the overnight staff from the 24-hour grocery store. But mixed in with the night shift workers were others. Day shift people who wanted to support us. Families of night workers, and incredibly, many of the porch light leavers themselves. "We wanted to walk with you," Mrs. Kowalski said, squeezing my hand. "To thank you for all you do." David had created special LED candles that connected to the app, glowing brighter when near a registered porch lighthouse. Carla bumped my shoulder. "Told you," she whispered. "Daylight." As we walked, the streets looked like rivers of light flowing through the neighborhood. You could hear 100 candle cups tapping softly like rain in plastic. At each marked house, we'd stop and sing, not Christmas carols, but songs chosen by the community. Lean on me. You've got a friend. Here comes the sun, which felt perfect even though we were celebrating the night. Homeowners came out, many crying, all smiling. Hot chocolate and coffee appeared like magic. Children in pajamas waved from windows. The Robinson twins from Cherry Street had made a banner that stretched across their entire porch. Our heroes don't wear capes, they wear scrubs, and security uniforms and aprons and work boots. Their mom, Patricia, was handing out hand-knit scarves she'd been making all winter. "One for every night shift worker," she said. "I've been knitting since November." On University Place, the college students had set up speakers playing soft music, and someone was projecting stars onto the trees. It looked like we were walking through the galaxy. A group of nursing students from UVM had joined us, still in their clinical uniforms, carrying signs that said "Future Night Shift" and "Learning from the Best." Mr. Peterson had gone all out. His porch was decorated with lights and signs reading "Night Shift Heroes." Bruno wore a cape. He'd invited his whole senior center, and they'd prepared sandwiches and soup for the walkers. As we sang on his lawn, he stood on his porch with tears streaming down his face. 40 years I've lived in this house," he said when the singing stopped. "This is the best night of all of them. My wife, she always loved this porch. After she passed, it just felt empty. Tonight," he said, gesturing to the crowd, "it feels full again. You all filled it up. You people, you make this more than just a neighborhood. You make it home." The Morrisons had turned their blessing box into a blessing station, with Lucy and her younger brother handing out homemade medals, cardboard circles covered in glitter and stickers hanging from yarn. Mine read "Superhero Nurse" in careful kid handwriting. I wore it for the rest of the walk. As we moved through the streets, more people joined. Families came out in robes and slippers. Someone started projecting thank you messages on the side of their house. The Riverside High School band appeared, still in their pajamas, playing uplifting songs. By the time we reached the cafe, our group had grown to nearly 1,000 people. The owner, Maria, had outdone herself. With help from the community, she'd transformed the parking lot into a celebration space. String lights created a canopy of stars. Local restaurants had donated food. A stage had been set up where people could share stories. The stories were what got me. Janet talked about the winter night when she'd slipped on ice, spraining her ankle, and 3 different porch light houses had come out to help her. Jerome, a security guard, shared how the blessing boxes had fed him during a tough month when money was tight. A day shift teacher named Susan told us about her husband, a nurse who died 5 years earlier. "I leave my light on for him," she said, "to light his way home. But I'm glad it lights your way too." When it was my turn to speak, I looked out at the sea of faces. My neighbors, my community, my extended family I'd never known I had, and could barely get the words out. 6 months ago, I counted porch lights to feel less alone, I said. Tonight I'm counting friends. You've shown me that darkness isn't something to fear when we face it together. Every light you leave on, every wave from a window, every blessing box and bench and cup of coffee, you're not just lighting up the street, you're lighting up lives. The celebration went until dawn, when the night shift truly ends and the day begins. As the sun rose, painting Burlington in shades of gold and pink, we stood together, night workers and day workers, young and old, all part of something bigger than ourselves. The Porch Light Project, as the media called it, spread to other cities. David's app went national, then international. City halls started pinning nightlight printouts beside snow routes and bus schedules. I got emails from nurses in Tokyo, bakers in Paris, security guards in Sao Paulo, all sharing their own stories of communities that came together to light the darkness. But for me, the magic remained in those 15 minutes between Riverside General and my apartment. Mrs. Kowalski still waited with her late-night tea. Mr. Peterson and Bruno still kept watch. The blessing boxes stayed full, the benches welcomed tired feet, and the lights never went out. A year later, Burlington made it official. April 28th became Night Light Night, an annual celebration of those who work while others sleep and those who light their way. Nightlight was the app. Night Light Night was the celebration. Other cities followed suit. Schools added porch light hours to newsletters. Churches and libraries pinned maps by the doors. What started as one lonely nurse counting porch lights had become a movement of mutual care. The second annual Nightlight Night was even bigger. The city arranged for special bus routes for night workers. Local businesses sponsored comfort stations with free food and warm drinks. The Burlington Free Press ran a special edition with profiles of night shift workers and the people who left lights on for them. I was featured in one of those profiles, photographed with Mrs. Kowalski on her porch. In the picture, we're both holding mugs of hot chocolate, her porch light glowing above us like a halo. The article talked about how she'd lost her husband 5 years ago, how leaving the light on started as a way to feel less alone in her empty house. Now, she was quoted as saying, "I have a whole community of night owls who check on me. Maggie here brings me stories from the hospital, keeps me connected to the world. That light isn't just for them anymore. It's for us." These days, when young nurses start at Riverside, I take them aside and tell them about the lights. I show them the app, point out Mrs. Kowalski's house, introduce them to Bruno. But most importantly, I tell them this: you're never alone in the dark. Sometimes community shows up in the smallest ways. A 60-watt bulb, a wave through glass, a light left on by someone who understands that kindness shines brightest when the world feels darkest. And every night, as I walk home from my shift, I still count the lights. Not because I need to anymore, but because each one reminds me of a beautiful truth. In a world that can feel so divided and dark, people still choose to look out for each other, one porch light at a time. Last week, a new nurse named Amy asked me, "Do you think the lights will always be there?" I thought about it for a moment, then smiled. As long as there are people who walk in the darkness, there will be people who light the way. That's not just hope talking. That's Burlington. That's humanity at its best. And as if to prove my point, right at that moment, Mrs. Kowalski's porch light flickered on, steady and sure, a beacon calling us home.